It is one of the deadliest secrets that medical care facilities are holding all across the nation tonight.
It's not about botched surgeries or risky operations that are performed on patients. It's about those patients who go in for routine procedures and end up dying avoidable deaths hours later.
On your side, Chief Investigator Ron Regan has more about the thousands of deaths that are happening in hospitals across the country.
These are patients who are recovering so well, they're back in their own hospital room, talking with family members. But we found far too many are dying within hours, and hospitals are failing to rescue.
I just describe it as half my heart died when she died. Because she was my right arm. Her and I were really close.
Amanda was just 18 years old.
She had got accepted to the local university, Indiana University.
There was a whole future ahead for her.
Very definitely.
But that summer, strep throat sent their daughter to the hospital.
The nevers are what's hard. He'll never walk down the aisle. I'll never get to pick out a dress. I'll never hold her children.
Something went terribly wrong.
We got a phone call that she was dead in bed and they were doing CPR on her.
Dead in bed. It's how hospitals describe dying suddenly and unexpectedly. And we found it's one of medicine's best kept secrets.
This sort of flies under the radar, and that's well known.
Dr. Frank Overdyke is a nationally recognized anesthesiologist. Are hospitals fighting to keep these deaths from going public?
Certainly, it does not bode well for the reputation from a marketing standpoint in a competitive healthcare environment to have unexplained deaths, which is essentially what these are.
Our 5-month nationwide investigation found it's not happening during surgery or in recovery rooms, but instead here in hospital rooms and floors where complications and risks are judged the absolute lowest, often within hours of family, flowers, and cards.
Could this have been prevented?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we feel 110% it could have been avoided.
Prevented with basic technology similar to this. $25 at drugstores. And alarm sounds when breathing slows and oxygen in the bloodstream reaches critical levels. Technology both doctors and hospitals have known for decades. But instead, we found lives are being left to chance. You essentially were dying.
Yes, I died, and I came back.
Matt Whitman was back in his hospital room on a general floor where patients routinely go for hours without being checked. A nurse later confided.
Something made me stick my head in that room, and I heard you take your last breath. And she was crying.
Everything was perfect. The surgery went well.
Marty Schmidt's wife was back in her hospital room.
She told me they found Gene not breathing.
So was Bill Neckerman.
And they found him cyanotic, so that means he was blue. And his heart eventually stopped and they did a code blue.
Brain damage so severe, his family made the painful decision to remove life support.
This didn't have to happen.
Oh no, this was absolutely preventable.
Preventable because we found hospitals and doctors already know what's causing so many patients to simply stop breathing.
Sometimes refer to that as the tip of the iceberg.
Dr. Robert Stolting is one of the nation's most respected medical experts.
This fix is available. It's available.
Yes.
It's out there. Why isn't it being more widely embraced?
You're right. The fix is out there.
He chaired the anesthesiology department at a major medical school, served on the FDA's Drug Safety Committee, and is president of the Anesthesia Patient Safety Foundation.
And what we know about opioids is that they can depress breathing.
Opioids are among the most powerful painkillers used following surgery. In recent years, creating an addiction epidemic in neighborhoods nationwide. But we found there's another opioid crisis inside hospitals. Why? In part, new pain management standards adopted 15 years ago.
Providing too much pain medication.
Well, in retrospect, too much pain medication.
Plus, we found hospitals actually profit when patients are kept pain-free. That's because patients grade hospitals on how well their pain is managed. Higher scores mean millions in federal cash, placing patients at risk.
The safety issue that we're dealing with is what we call a gap between what we do and what we know.
Especially deadly for an estimated 40 million Americans suffering sleep apnea. It's signaled by chronic snoring and made even more life-threatening by opioids. That's because many go undiagnosed.
And ultimately it may reach a point where it can cause damage to the brain and to the heart.
What we believe happened is that he may have fallen asleep and was unable to wake himself up because he had sleep apnea.
And there's one more factor increasing your risk.
She wasn't monitored.
You know, because they didn't monitor her, or they didn't, I don't know. I don't know if they didn't know or they just assumed not to do it, but it just didn't happen.
If he had had a pulse oximeter, you know, which is the little clip on your finger, it probably would not have happened.
But our investigation found hospitals across the country are failing to continually monitor patients.
People are denying that it's happening, and yet every hospital I've given a talk in about the risks of opioids, they've come up to me afterwards and said, yes, we had a patient just a month ago who we found dead in bed from respiratory depression.
Dr. Michael Ramsey heads up anesthesiology at Baylor Medical Center in Dallas.
This is something that's entirely preventable, and it's something that we need to stop.
But it hasn't. We found as many as 50,000 have died or suffered serious brain injury over the last 10 years, equivalent to nearly 300 fully loaded jetliners.
The airline industry, if you had the equivalent of a safety issue where we knew that it was a safety issue, and we even knew perhaps how to reduce the likelihood of it occurring, to me that gap would be closed immediately.
A gap hospitals have failed to close for more than a decade.
This sort of collateral damages, or whatever cost of doing business, whatever you want to call this, is unacceptable in our healthcare system.
Where is the pushback?
So the pushback comes from the medical establishment. I'm in a way embarrassed to say.
4 full years ago, the top accrediting agency for hospitals, called the Joint Commission, found improper monitoring causes more than 1 in 4 adverse events, including death, and may actually be higher than reported. Even so, a leading foundation for healthcare technology warns patients remain at risk.
I think there's more the Joint Commission could do, because the healthcare delivery community listens when the Joint Commission speaks.
Meanwhile, the luck that saved Matt Whitman.
I truly think it's criminal that this isn't used in every time a person is attached to a pain pump or an opioid, that it's not monitored, because it's out there.
Ran out for Amanda, Bill, and Jean, plus thousands more just like them every year.
If you have the capabilities and you have the machinery, you use it. I don't want anybody to lose a loved one to something that's preventable.
An exclusive On Your Side investigation first uncovered patients' lives being placed at risk inside hospitals across the country. Tonight, a major Northeast Ohio hospital system is taking significant action. Chief Investigator Ron Regan joins us. And Ron, it is precisely what your investigation found is saving lives.
Well, it is, and University Hospital's facility is the first in the entire state to adopt life-saving steps that our investigation found others continue to ignore. An alarm went off.
I heard an alarm, and it woke me up.
Mark Meyer was in his hospital room, recovering from successful surgery.
I was so relaxed then that I can see how someone could slip away.
Because you had pain medication.
Sure I did.
Painkillers like opioids, among the most commonly used in hospitals across the country. But our investigation found they can slow breathing to critical levels, causing catastrophic results, including brain injury and death, affecting as many as 50,000 patients over the last 10 years. But in Mark's room, this alarm alerted doctors and nurses before potentially finding him dead in bed. It's how hospitals describe healthy patients on floors judged to have the lowest risk, dying suddenly and unexpectedly. And we found most hospitals fail to continuously monitor patients.
I think we need to do this to everyone. It's very important that people are monitored in this way.
This is saving lives. You have no doubt.
I absolutely believe that it is saving lives.
Dr. Amitabh Goel is Chief Medical Officer at University Hospital's Geneva Medical Center. A near miss with another patient.
One of the nurses happened to go by and go into a room and noticed that she was blue. She was like cyanotic and she was gasping for air.
Convinced him.
I vowed from that time, our team, we said we have to never let that happen again.
We see the patient's oxygen level, their heart rate, and their respiratory rate.
Thomas Knowles heads up respiratory therapy here, where continuous monitoring for all surgical patients is now routine in every room.
We apply a sensor to the finger for the first two parameters and a second sensor to the neck, and we actually listen to airflow.
It can also be worn on a patient's arm. A series of escalating alarms are sent directly to nurses and supervisors. It's the same technology that led to significant cost savings, reported by researchers at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center in New Hampshire.
We solved a problem the industry thought was unsolvable.
Joseph Kiani founded the company that developed it.
They not only saved $1.5 million a year in just one ward, and they transferred it to multiple wards, which now they're talking about several $1 million a year, but they haven't had dead in bed since 2007.
And it's technology the entire university hospital system is now considering using at facilities across Northeast Ohio.
We'll do everything we can to protect our patients. One life saved, it matters. It matters more than anything.
The way that the anesthesia and the opioids, the way they slow your respiration down, it's just a very, very crucial thing.
What is your message to hospitals across the country?
You owe it to that patient to make sure that you monitor that airway, because you cannot predict necessarily what's going to happen.
And next month, university hospitals will expand this type of monitoring at its Conneaut facility. But so far, it stands alone. The remaining 148 hospitals across Ohio, including the Cleveland Clinic and Metro Health, use only selective, not universal monitoring. I'm Chief Investigator Ron Regan.